Champions galore as Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, and Ricochet have gold. And we're going to talk about it in just a second, so stay tuned. This is WrstlXtra.
Yo, this is a WrstlXtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, always joined by my trios team, the Real House of Black, Mex, the WrestleManiac, if you will. Yeah, and of course, the omnipresent man. That is the Professor Gerard Bonner. We predicted it. We've been asking for it. We've been waiting for it. We never expected it. But then when it started to happen, we were like, it has to. Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair are the new WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. Of course, the pair defeated the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane, at Backlash in Lyon, France, in front of that crazy crowd. Supplement deux. That I went to sleep with that ringing in my head. I woke up like I was kicking out. Oh my word, that Backlash crowd was amazing. But let's talk about our two queens who are now queens of WWE. Actually, let me go to you first, Gerard. Gerard, you posted a very interesting reel. Was it just yesterday?
Yes.
About the two ladies and your thoughts on the reaction to them being together, what people expected when Jade was first signed. Just give us a little bit of a run through of exactly what it was that you were saying and some of the points that you made.
For sure. You know, the idea of Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair being under the WWE umbrella, everybody started by saying, hey, you know what? We can't wait for them to fight each other. And so we were all honestly surprised when they paired them together. But as soon as they paired them together, I mean, like literally from the day one that they paired them together, everybody's talking about when will they fight? When will they separate? And, you know, this is akin to reading the end of the book before you ever start the book. Like, who does that? Us wrestling fans. That's who do that, apparently. You know, the scary part about that is we're going to miss the moments and the history that's being created in front of our eyes. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I know for me, every time I see Bianca and Jade together, it does something to me from a perspective of, oh my God, we're here. Like, we are in a world where two incredible, athletic, intelligent, gifted African-American women are on top of the world's largest wrestling company. This was not possible before. And the unfortunate piece about the internet wrestling community right now is everybody's talking about, oh, but I can't wait till she, you know, turns on who's going to turn on who. And this is going to be Hogan Savage. This is going to be Mega Powers Explode. All the other things. Can we go back to the point where we didn't know this could happen, where we actually celebrated Hogan and Savage together, where we celebrated Savage and Warrior together, where we celebrate these powerful people being together? What's bigger than this is we're getting things that we didn't get before. We're getting press conferences. We're getting to see these two women authentically enjoy each other. It kind of reminds me, and it's a different level, but you'll understand, reminds me of, you know, when we saw Baron Corbin and Braun Breaker together. We all kind of went, oh, this won't last long at all. And before we knew it, we loved it. You know, sometimes you need to see these people together. And for a Bianca and a Jade, who a year ago, this was impossible. This was impossible. There was just no way we would imagine this. And now they've got championships. They are loving each other, you know, and you can't, you know, you cannot fabricate chemistry. The look on Jade's face when they got the pin and she hugged Bianca Saturday, and it was this feeling of thank you, this feeling of authentic relief, like I'm in good hands, like, oh my God, I really can do this, and you helped me do this. I think they're going to teach more lessons together than they will apart. And I hope that we won't be so distracted by the concept of trying to armchair book the WrestleMania match that we miss the great lessons that they're teaching us by showing that Black women do get along, that Black women can be together on screen. I remind people of this because, in 2024, people forget. There was a time in the wrestling world where you could not have more than one Black person in the territory, or else they were fighting to see who would have that spot. We now live in a world where that's not the case. And I hope that we can really appreciate the beauty of having Bianca and Jade as tag champions, having Naomi thriving, having some of the other names who we will mention later in the show thriving, and not having to compete against each other. Let's please relish and enjoy this, because I don't know when we will get this again.
Very true. Very true. And as you said that last bit, we are kind of seeing a lot of that kind of coming to the fore, especially in NXT. Obviously, you see Lash Legend, Jakara Jackson together. You're seeing Sol Ruka coming through, Kalani Jordan. Of course, Kiana James has just made. Yep, Jada Parker, Kiana James just made her way to Raw. There's a lot that could happen and is going to happen, and we can see it. As to quote, I think it was Bianca that actually said it in the press conference. It's becoming the norm. Yes, it's becoming the norm, and I think that's the beauty of it completely. But I'm gonna be that guy. We've talked about it a number of times, but I see something a little bit different in the interactions that happened. I believe it was on SmackDown. We're all been talking about, Jade maybe turning on Bianca turning on Jade. More than likely Jade on Bianca, because Bianca's never going to turn heel. But I saw something a little bit different on Friday. That's something else that might just happen. And I've got a feeling Mex has seen the same thing. Mex, we saw an interaction between Jade and Bianca, and also Bayley and Naomi as well. Obviously, they had an 8-woman tag match against Damage Control, won the match, but then after the match, there was a bit of heat between Bianca and Bayley. But it was interesting to see the reaction of Naomi, or the fact that there was no real reaction from Naomi. I'm hoping you saw the same thing as me.
I did. I saw, Naomi basically no sell this interaction between these two. And even just on that, I just love this whole thing between the four of them. Like, Bayley is there like de facto by being like Naomi's friend, but just because it's not like, oh, the usual thing of, oh, well, if you're cool with that person, you're cool with all of us. No, you did this and that to me for X amount of years. And even how this is all the stuff that we've been saying, obviously, blanket statement, heel turn, Bianca, please. But this is all the little things that they can still do with somebody's character that don't determine them to have the whole shift of a heel turn. She is being a real human being. I'm not just a baby face that's going to now accept you in with a hug because, you're my mate's friend and you're a good guy now. You really done something to me over the last 2 years. And she's playing that off. And on top of, obviously, what you're saying with Naomi, it's knocking heads with Jade as well. And they're telling it quietly on commentary. They're saying that, Bianca needs to get ahead in the game here because, her and Jade need to make sure they're on the same wavelength. And Jade was, I think she made some type of comment to Bianca on Friday on SmackDown, like, yeah, you need to kind of stay focused with all of this stuff. I think maybe when Bayley had walked off screen. And then at the press conference as well, they made reference to, Bianca, I always go on and on about this Bayley stuff. And Jade was like, yeah, you do, sort of thing. So it's like little things like that, where it's like, we're on the same page. We're obviously tag team champions at this point, but, this is where you need to be focused on. And, you don't have to be friends with her, but just kind of let that go, sort of thing. So whether they are planning to do anything with these little wrinkles they're adding to Bianca's character and stuff, who knows? But it's making great grounds to just be more than 3 excellent women walking out together. All the of that. They're actually giving them just little bits of story that they're telling with, you know, their overall presentation as well.
You know, and I bring up all of that not to kind of be the guy to read the end of the book necessarily, but almost to kind of show the detail in the book. You know, we've seen over the last few years, especially with the Bloodline, kind of now a bit more with the Judgment Day as well, where these long-term storylines continue. There's always these little things, these little interactions, and we almost expect the next week it's going to blow up, but it doesn't. But still little things keep happening. And to see that type of detail, to see that kind of investment in the story, for me is the beauty. For me is the thing that I'm trying to kind of, you know, highlight here. You know, we've been saying, Mex, for the longest time that we've been doing this show, you know, we've been waiting for Bianca to have some kind of, you know, some character and all this kind of stuff and all the rest of it. And I'm seeing it happening. I'm in no rush for it to blow up, in no rush, but I think I'm more excited to see just how they tell the story, how long it goes on, what it can become. And for everyone involved, and, you know, again, I'll go back to the whole Bloodline thing. We see where Jey Uso is now. You know, it can only be a good thing. We see what Solo Sikoa's doing now. You know what I mean? We see obviously what Roman Reigns became and all the rest of it. So to just to have a fraction of that for each of these ladies, for Jade, Naomi, and Bianca, to have just a fraction of that is phenomenal. Like, for me, Bianca's the Roman, you know, Naomi's probably the Jay, and Jade's the Solo. When you think about it like that, in about 2 years' time, wow.
I mean, the only thing I just quickly throw in here is just on that, and again, whether they wish to do anything with it, this is just can spiral into different things. Do we see, you know, Trinity and Naomi kind of become jealous that these guys are excelling and she can't kind of get a grip of the title or anything like that? Does Bianca's obsession with Bayley drive her to maybe lose the tag team championship some way, some form, and then Jade uses that as motivation to kind of get rid of Bianca because she's not focused here? Like, there's just a lot of directions they could go with just these little bits they're setting up.
I think another option here also is to look at where Naomi fits in all of this, because what I do like about this is I think everyone can relate to you're doing all that you can, you're doing the best that you can, and then all of a sudden someone has a rough spot where they are, and now they want to come over to you, but they haven't treated you right in all this time. So there's a lot that you can relate to with many of the people in this story. You can see yourself in Naomi and trying to befriend Bayley because, you know, she's been your friend for so long, and hey, you didn't do that to me, we're still cool, you supported me, I wasn't there when you did that to Bianca. And Bianca's like, wait, no. See, you weren't here, but I was here. And this is what happened. And no, it's not forgive and forget. Everybody can relate to someone in that story. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that. And with that, you know, you could have a space where Naomi leaves the big three for Bayley if she's put in a spot where she has to choose between the two, you know, and potentially a Naomi Bayley versus Jade and Bianca kind of situation. Is a great, I mean, that's a marquee tag team matchup for the tag title. So I think to that point, there are lots of places for it to go where it just doesn't go, boom, now we just have random heel turn between Jade and Bianca. There are stories to be told. And to your point, if this does anything like what the Bloodline has done in terms of creating additional stars, that's great, because right now pairing Jade with a Bianca is a win for Jade. It's what Jade needs as she is, again, shedding off all that did or didn't happen in AEW and starting to embrace who she can be in WWE.
And again, that's the beauty of what's going on. Again, it's not the whole begging for the heel turn or begging for the blow up. It's reveling, as you said, Gerard, you know, it's reveling in the here and now and what we can get from this, and how much we can enjoy from all these intricacies, all these details, all these possibilities with the big three, and just having that just in the women's division in general.
Right.
is a great thing. I saw a stat, I think it was from last week, maybe, NXT, where they had, you know, I think it's, I don't know if it was the second week or over the 2 weeks of spring breaking, where there were like 5 different stories within the women's division alone.
Wow.
And
Wow.
you know what I mean, and that's something that we've been begging for on the main roster, maybe, or haven't had in a while, and all this kind of stuff. But we're seeing that happening again. Obviously, we've got this stuff that we're talking about now. You've got Becky, and you've got Liv, and you've got everything else that's happening. And then on top of all of that, we've got the Queen of the Ring happening as well, and that's going to give us even more stuff to think about. Let's jump into that very quickly, actually, before I actually go to the whole Ricochet and the Speed Championship. We see Naomi in the tournament. The SmackDown matches haven't happened yet. They'll be taking place this Friday. What do we see are her chances in this tournament? Do you think it's necessary? Do you think it's inevitable? What's the possibility? To say real quickly, her match is going to be against Candice LeRae. The first round match is Naomi versus Candice LeRae. I don't know if that's happening on Friday. Not every match in the first round happened on Monday, so there's a possibility it might not be. But how do you see her chances, Gerard?
I definitely see her getting past the first round. No knock to Candice LeRae. But what I also see with this is, you know, the names that are mentioned on both the men's and women's side automatically made me go, oh, we got a serious tournament here. You know, this isn't, you know, when it was first announced, King and Queen of the Ring, I was like, okay, are we going to get kind of what we've had in previous years where it's basically mid cards are us? Sorry to say it like that, but you know what I mean, right? And then, you know, this past Saturday, when we started seeing first round matches named for Raw on both the men and women's side, I went, oh, okay, we're getting serious again. So I like the concept of this. I think Naomi has a great chance. And quite frankly, I think between potential for Queen of the Ring and Money in the Bank, one of those should go her way. I'm not sure which one. You could make the argument Queen of the Ring could be more prestigious at this point because you're going through, you know, multiple women in full-on wrestling matches as opposed to one ladder match. So I don't know which of those would work, but I definitely think her entry into this tournament is huge, and I think she has potential to go very, very far.
Most definitely. Going back to Ricochet. So Ricochet is the new Speed champion. It was officially announced. He defeated Johnny Gargano on the last episode. I think it was on Wednesday on X.
Friday.
Was it Friday's one? Okay.
Yes.
No problem. Friday on X. This Speed Championship. Mex, give me your idea of this whole Speed Championship. The whole concept of speed matches is 3-minute time limit. And as much as people thought it was going to be cruiserweight focused, it's not, because we've seen the likes of, you know, Bronson Reed was in the tournament. Odyssey Jones is in there. Recently, Ivar's kind of perked up and said he wants to take part. What are your thoughts on the Speed Championship and Ricochet also being the inaugural champion?
I think it was fairly obvious Ricochet would be the inaugural champion. Very deserving, trusted member of the roster, puts on great matches, great performances. This could be, you know, their plan, and seemingly it probably is a bit of a plan to kind of get him to doing some other stuff on TV. The Speed Championship, just the whole idea as a whole, I feel it's just to satisfy the era we're living in terms of social media. You know, people maybe aren't watching full matches. They can see, you know, reports on, you know, what time people are clocking into matches and how long people are staying interested, and probably more so than on TV on their YouTube channel, since they are more than frequently posting up the full matches now these days. They're probably seeing, right, people are tuning in for the first 3 minutes or so, 2.5 minutes or so, then they might drop off. So why not make a little division for social media where we can have these matches in you lot's time span of 2 minutes, 3 minutes? If that's all you guys can concentrate for, then let's have a 3-minute match and have a tournament around it, or a whole division around it. And yeah, I just think it's a smart way, you know, with the whole concept. It's going to be very fast paced, it's going to be very entertaining and stuff like that, so could be a thing to grab casuals as well into the product, and they might start looking for more. Yeah, I think it's largely harmless. I mean, with some of the names in it, you always wish, you know, look how good they are, even this is 3 minutes, you wish more for them. And you saw like a Gargano there, McDonough there doing some great stuff, Cedric Alexander, like you want to see these people in better positions. But I guess it's all about taking the opportunity that comes and seeing if something flourishes from there.
Yeah, for sure. We saw Ricochet in action as well yesterday in the first round of the King of the Ring tournament, losing to Ilya Dragunov. What was interesting to me is after they've made the official announcement of him being the speed champion on Friday, he didn't come out with the belt on Monday. Gerard, do you think there's a reason behind this? Is there something here to look at?
Well, I think the reason behind it is, again, much to Mex's point, this is a social media championship, basically. So putting it on main TV won't necessarily help, since on main TV, you don't want a 3-minute match. Couple that with, it could diminish the championship if he's going to lose in the first round. So it didn't make sense to bring that particular title out in this. I mean, they acknowledged it in a lower third. But I think, you know, again, this is more about kind of separating the two lines, really. You know, this is the social media kind of space, and these are the things that you'll happen over in that parallel universe. Over here, you know, we have these other things that are going on. I kind of look at it in music terms as the single era versus the album era, you know, where there was a time where people loved full projects and their attention span was, yeah, I'm going to devote this next hour to sitting down. Now, you know, they're going to sit down for 2 to 3 minutes, you know, and they'll listen to that single. And if you get lucky, you can put an EP together for 15 minutes and might squeeze 5 or 6 songs on there. But that's the era we're in. And I think WWE says, hey, this is going to be the speed era. Those parameters don't really mean much over here on USA or on Fox. So we're not going to bring that out here. Plus, you would make the title look bad if he's going to lose it, because at this point, he's the only champion entering into the King of the Ring. True. So you wouldn't want to make it look bad, and he hasn't even had his first title defense yet.
And what a phenomenal match it was between Ilya and Ricochet. I think the second that I saw it was going to be them two, it brought me back to I hope I get these letters correct in order. WCPW back in the day. I just knew it was that whole mix of it was a time when Ricochet was kind of like the main man on the indies and had this European tour, ended up facing the likes of Rey Mysterio, I think Keith Lee as well, and those matches were just crazy. And to see that we got, you know, a good chunk of that level of action as well on Raw was phenomenal. To run through some of the other matches, the first round matches, we also had Finn Balor versus Jey Uso, who was filling in for, or he was put in there because Drew McIntyre was last minute, couldn't compete. Obviously, we saw the main event, which was Gunther versus Sheamus, number 3. Again, you know, Gunther coming out on top again. Sheamus still unable to beat Gunther. It's crazy to me. That match was just madness. The other match that's going to happen, didn't happen on Raw, but I think they said it's going to happen at a live event, is Kofi versus Rey Mysterio. Now, what do we fancy our chances when it comes to Kofi? My thought is, obviously, there's no Xavier Woods. Because he was injured by Gunther. Obviously, he had this whole thing. He's the previous King of the Ring and was looking to become a second-time King of the Ring champion. Does Kofi kind of fill in this space? Does he get close to the final because Xavier Woods isn't in there?
I don't think so.
No.
What they have done on yesterday's episode was obviously Kofi used that as great motivation to try to get through the competition to get his opportunity at Gunther, because Gunther's now at this point waiting in the next round.
Right.
And this is what helps build the prestigiousness of a tournament like this sort of thing. It's not just mid-carders like we were saying. It's now real people, real feuds, real motivation, as well as wanting to obviously win King of the Ring himself, avenge for Xavier Woods, take down Gunther. Like, he's got so many reasons as to why this is important to him. And yeah, I think it's a good spot for him, and I'm sure Kofi Kingston will do what Kofi Kingston does best. I don't see him beating Gunther though. But I think it's also very interesting the fact that they are having this match at a live event. And is this like them maybe wanting to test out having stakes at live events? Like having matches that mean something at live events. Maybe that's maybe a ploy to see if maybe more people would attend, if these matches actually mean something and feed into TV. But yeah, I think it's a good place to put it, as opposed to giving us, because of time constraints, a 5-minute Rey Mysterio Kofi Kingston match on TV.
Gerald, how do you see Kofi? Does he get past Rey Mysterio at this live event whenever it happens?
I think he does. I think he gets back for all of the reasons that Mex said. I mean, the idea of Kofi versus Gunther, it's a story that's already written. So it only makes sense, given that Gunther, before he declared that he was going in the King of the Ring, had some harsh words and actions for the guys from the New Day. So I think it only makes sense. For Rey Mysterio, he's the most active Hall of Famer in wrestling history. I just thought usually when you did your Hall of Fame speech and got in, you were done. Not the case for Rey Mysterio at all. And so while it would be cool to have Rey Mysterio against Gunther, either way, I hate to say this, but neither of them are getting past Gunther. So I do hope for Kofi's sake that he does defeat Rey Mysterio so he can go in and defend the honor of the New Day in this match against Gunther.
It should be interesting. We've kind of already established, I think the world has established, that at least on the Raw side, it's Gunther that's going to the final.
Or at least the Raw final, because I think it's going to be, I was going to say it's hard. I initially thought it might be him and Ilya, but this Jey Uso piece is throwing a real monkey wrench in there. Ilya and Jey Uso is going to be a problem. Do you hear me? A problem. And I can't figure out who's gonna win that one. And whoever it is going against Gunther. I think the Raw side right now is really, really hot. It's really hot.
The Raw side is nice. I think the fans would want to see Ilya versus Gunther, of course, and that's possible. And in no detriment to Jey Uso, because I feel as though someone will interfere in order for Ilya to win. You've got Judgment Day, you've got Drew McIntyre. There's options there, so I think it's possible. But whatever we get, any of those two versus Gunther is going to be an absolute banger. Pun intended.
I got goosebumps today looking at the whole thing, the whole brackets, and thinking we might actually get a Gunther Bobby Lashley final.
And that's what I was about to get onto as well, because I'm looking at the SmackDown ones, and let's run down really quickly what we've got. We've got AJ Styles versus Randy Orton. That's a final in so many.
Yeah, it is.
So many
It is.
That's a final alone.
It is.
Baron Corbin versus Carmelo Hayes. LA Knight versus Santos Escobar. And then Bobby Lashley versus Tama Tonga.
The MFT.
Good Lord.
The MFT. Now, my fear is Tama Tonga's hot right now. He's just come in, all the rest of it. bloodline, blah, blah, blah. Do they have Bobby Lashley put over Tama Tonga?
Yes. Tama Tonga's not losing. Having
It's his
said all
first
of that,
singles match.
Tama Tonga's not losing. He ain't losing.
And that's to the detriment of Bobby Lashley. It almost feels like once again, in the sense where Bobby seems to be in this space now for about a year or so, where he is, more or less putting talent over, where there is still so much he can still do. And so far he can still go, but yet we find ourselves almost, as we've just said, expecting him to lose because Tama Tonga's just come through. Does he lose? Gerard, go for it.
Lashley could win. And here's why. There's still a Kevin Owens, Randy Orton issue right now after what happened at Backlash. And God forbid somehow the bloodline involves themselves in this AJ Randy Orton thing. So order of these matches is going to matter. Because if they get themselves involved in this Orton situation, there easily could be payback. And even if they don't, there still could be payback. So it may not be a lock for Tama Tonga to win this thing. And then, just thinking about where the bloodline is, I'm not going to say they don't care about the King of the Ring. I'm sure they do. And honestly, there's a story. Tama's dad was a king. So to be able to kind of, follow in that legacy, that does matter. Ooh, this is hard to call.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's
how it should be, though.
Exactly.
That is how it should be.
Exactly.
I'm going to make a bold statement. And maybe it's because WWE hasn't done it much. But this tournament right now looks better than any of the tournaments AEW has put together. And AEW deems themselves as the king of the tournament. But this, think about, first of all, how big it is. Normally, AEW's tournaments are about 8 people strong. Maybe if you get lucky, 16. Most of those brackets end up being very predictable. We are still having a hard time in round 1. And we, in essence, we've got 16 on the men, 16 on the women. Simultaneously.
That's right.
This is nice.
I didn't know you were gonna say that. I need to think to agree with that. I did enjoy Continental Classic at the end of last year. I thought that was a great.
That was good.
That was good, and I think it was good because it was more like the New Japan style of tournament where it was round robin. There were points involved, and we got to see certain things. The unfortunate part is it was you, Mex, who called that tournament from the beginning.
Yeah, that's true.
So that kind of destroys my theory right now. Or it destroys that theory because you called it from the beginning and we can't get out of the first round right now.
Right.
But you were like, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Eddie Kingston's going to win. He's going to have all 3 titles and they're going to make it difficult for him. And sure enough, he loses his first couple of matches. That's exactly what happened.
I did say that, didn't I?
You did. So back to my theory, this is a better tournament.
What I thought you were going to say was that this is the best King of the Ring tournament they've ever done.
It is also
I think wholeheartedly already
definitely
tournament.
Absolutely, by far.
And that's another thing I was going to say. When you think of some of the people who are not in the tournament. And obviously, they're caught up in the whole Intercontinental thing, but Chad Gable, Bronson Reed, not in it. Ivar's been doing great stuff over the last 6 months or so. Braun Breaker's not in it. There were still so many people that are not in this tournament, but yet you look at who is in it and you're not thinking, oh, actually, maybe if you took out him, you put him instead. And you're not even, you're not fussed. You can make replacements, but it's not like, why is that person in it in the first place? Right. You know what I mean? And I think that's the beauty of it. And again, like you said, we're struggling to get out of this first round. Carmelo Hayes versus Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin's returned to the main roster. Carmelo Hayes has already made a statement by becoming the first pick from NXT to the main roster. had his little bit of a, one-to-one with Bobby Lashley as well. How far do we think he can go? Because if he gets past Corbin, it's then either Styles or Randy Orton in the next round. Wow. AJ Styles versus Carmelo Hayes.
Yeah.
What have we done to deserve this?
That's if AJ Styles gets past Randy Orton.
Exactly.
That can easily
Carmelo and Randy Orton.
Well. Yeah. That could easily not happen. Either way, I'd like to think he gets past Corbin to start off with. My thinking about Corbin is Corbin's done a lot of good work in NXT over the last year or whatever. Like that kind of will go to poo if he loses in this first round once he comes back. And I don't know how he then sets himself up for the next year if he kind of loses at this point. But I do expect Carmelo Hayes to progress. Whatever legend is waiting for him in the next round, that's his.
Just wow. Yeah, SmackDown is going to be very, very interesting. Just as Raw was yesterday, and I believe it was Ben from Wrestling Republic. He put out a post in reaction to everything that happened on Raw yesterday, and said this was like probably the best Raw that he's seen in terms of in-ring action in a long time. And I would definitely say there definitely was a bit more of a focus on the wrestling aspect. And the funny thing is that the promos that happened were a little bit weird. It was some good stuff, but it just felt not unhinged, but just separate, just not. It just didn't. Make
on its own like
sense.
Island.
The
rest of the show.
It really didn't. It really didn't. So I think SmackDown's going to be a very interesting one, and this whole King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring tournament is looking very, very, very interesting. Speaking of and mentioning Carmelo, we head ourselves back to where he made his name known in NXT, and we see the new era, the whoop that era of NXT. We're not about it no more. It's whoop that now. It's whoop that now. Of course, Trick Williams is the main man and the NXT champion. And a very interesting promo that went down as he came out to kind of address the fans and all the rest of it. And of course, his love interest, so to speak. Lash Legend came out looking absolutely phenomenal, by the way, to speak to Trick Williams and handed him some envelope after the very awkward dialogue between them. I mean, I'm glad I'm not a child anymore and my parents aren't sitting there watching it with me, because I just would have felt so weird. But there was an envelope handed to Trick Williams. There seems to be this whole thing of NXT with envelopes being handed and secrets and blah blah blah. We've seen it with with the D'Angelo family and with Chase U and all the rest of it. What is this envelope? How is this envelope gonna have any significance? Have we any idea as to what this envelope involves? Anyone?
I think it's a contract, maybe for Noam Dar to face him main event of a pay-per-view. Maybe Metaphor have broken some type of deal, and that's why she's so kind of cocky, confident. That you're gonna want to see what's in here, and this could be enjoy your title run now sort of thing, because the end is coming. So I think that's probably what it is.
Gerard,
well, first of all, it's been a long time since two people have done a promo like that, and it still sits with me. And I still feel like I don't know what I'm supposed to feel right now. Because you could cut that with a knife. It was just like, this is wild. By the way, happy birthday, Lash Legend. Her birthday was yesterday.
Yes.
And what's interesting to me, I think, because she was carrying this envelope prior to this interaction with Trick, I think it is some sort of deal of some sort where she's got some info on him, and she might leak the info unless he partners with her. And she's got to stick with him this entire run, and he's not going to like it. She's going to cheat to cause him to win. He's not going to like it. It's not going to be how he wants to operate. And at some point, he's going to want to break the deal, and breaking the deal is what could cost him the championship. Now, what we end up learning about Trick in this process, I don't know, but I think she's got something on him. And, there people were talking about, who's the baby? No, it's not a baby or anything like that. But it is definitely something.
Pregnancy test results.
I don't think we're going that way, but it's definitely something that is going to cause Trick to have to be connected to Lash. And she's going to, for lack of a better term, blackmail him. She's going to find a way to have her way with him and basically control the NXT championship.
That would be interesting. I think it might be a mixture of your two ideas, in the sense where Lash has some kind of information on Trick. Maybe in this whole thing where they've kissed and they've had their interactions and blah blah blah. Trick's giving away some kind of information. She's using that for Noam Dar's advantage, and it's gonna be a thing where eventually Trick has to have a match with Noam Dar, and in some way, Lash is gonna then eventually side with Trick Williams in some way, shape, or form. It's gonna be some madness between them.
Samson and Delilah. That's what this is right here. He has laid his head in her lap.
Yes.
And what is the secret of your strength, Trick? And nah, girl, it ain't. Let's talk about it. Nah, at some point, he's gonna really tell her. And when he tells her, we got a Samson and Delilah thing happening here.
That I think it is very much that type of thing. He's given his guard up out of some secret or something like that, and she's gonna take full advantage of it for as long as possible. And then, as you said, probably eventually costing the championship or come very, very close to that, if not ultimately that. But yeah, it's gonna be very, very interesting.
Quite.
The other surprise that we had was following Obafemi retaining his North American Championship. The Cardiac Kid. The Cardiac Kid.
Wow.
My favorite guy on NXT has returned a lot sooner than we expected. He got injured, I think, mid 2023. Was expected to be out for, I believe it was like a year or maybe longer than that. He's made a return and will actually be in action on tonight's episode of NXT as well. Mex, what are your thoughts when you heard that music, when you saw him come through the crowd in very much people's champ Wes Lee fashion? What are your thoughts when he squared up to Obafemi?
Yeah, happy to see that he's back. He's well back ahead of schedule, like you said. I think the North American title has moved past him at this point. I think we called him the greatest ever North American champion after that initial run. I stick by that, unless Obafemi or anyone else wants to prove me wrong later down the line. But I think that title lays with him and he can rest easy with that. For me, for Wesley, obviously he can go back to have a match with Obafemi. That was his title, etc. It has to now be, NXT championship. If he's going to remain in NXT, he has more than enough experience in terms of his ability, his promo stuff. He's reached into this whole different bag of, not just being like this excitable character where we saw him before with like the Rascals kind of stuff. He's had like deep emotional segments over his time in NXT where he's kind of had to show another angle, be on himself, which is a new thing as well. So I definitely think now it's time to put all of that together, all those experiences, go for the big one. We know we are probably going to be on this Trick train for a while, but you know, he can take time, build up his confidence in the ring. Obviously, he's just returning from injury anyway. And then we circle back around to it, whether, you know, Trick loses it to somebody first, and then the next person is Wes Lee after that, whoever that intermediary person is going to be, or maybe you get a Trick versus Wes situation down the line. But I just think that after this initial like little comeback tour, that has to be Wes Lee's focus, because he's of that ilk, he's of that ability now. So yeah, let's just get him to where he needs to be.
So is it inevitable then that, you know, we're clearly going to see Obafemi versus Wes Lee? Gerard, do you feel that as though it's inevitable that Obafemi wins and carries on, and then Wes Lee just finds himself in another space?
I do. I think so. You know, much to Max's point, you know, Wes Lee's entire persona has really grown past the North American Championship. It's not a knock to the North American Championship, but I think some might forget Wes Lee's lone NXT title match against Carmelo Hayes and how significant of a match that was. And it's about time for Wes Lee to, you know, establish that again. You know, what happens in that short period of time, well, it wasn't short, but, you know, 7 to 8 months that Wes Lee was gone, is NXT has progressed significantly.
True.
To where now that you've got Carmelo gone and Ilya gone and several of the others that are gone, Wes Lee comes in as a veteran now. You know, he doesn't come in as that guy who's trying to prove himself. So the veterans in that particular space should not be fighting for the NXT championship. Excuse me, the NXT North American championship. They should be fighting for the NXT championship. So I think the idea of a Trick Williams and Wes Lee match, sign me up. Sign me up. That's going to be good.
We saw the place shake when Trick came out, and so just imagine, you know, the People's Champ in Wes Lee. It's almost like two People's Champions at the same time,
right?
In Wes Lee and Trick Williams. So to see them two go at it for the NXT Championship would be phenomenal. The reaction, the part, all of that. The moment that it would be, the significance of it would be phenomenal. But I do agree with both of you in the sense where, you know, the North American Championship is, you know, Wes Lee is beyond that now. He made it as prestigious as it is, or, you know, kept it relevant in the space of time that he had it. And yes, it makes sense in terms of story that he wants to come back for it because he never lost it and he had to relinquish it and stuff like that. And I get it. But I think it's also a very good thing for Obafemi as well, in the sense where, you know, this guy who kind of made it, you know, as great as it is and had the run that he had, for Obafemi to beat Wes Lee would be brilliant for him. Obafemi's run already has been just different. If it carries on for another few months, we can definitely argue whether Wes Lee or Obafemi are the best North American champions for sure. So it's going to be a great match between them. But I do believe, with all things kind of considered, Obafemi should win. But then Wes Lee needs to kind of move up the card, I guess. You know, going forward.
I just wanted to add, I do think it's important as well. I think it's important as well that, you know, Trick Williams has the level of competitor of a Wes Lee, a Noam Dar as well. You know, these guys that, you know, they've had 10, 15-year careers before they've even got to NXT. Trick needs these guys more than anything to kind of help his title run. And, you know, if I draw the comparison to a Jade Cargill in AEW, facing a lot of people that were maybe relatively new, maybe still more experienced than her, but still maybe 4 or 5 years in the game ahead of her, it's not enough to help develop the person. We saw like Jade Cargill had her best matches against an Athena, a Ruby Soho, people that have been out here, you know, doing this thing for a while. And you know, imagine Jade's whole 50, 60 wins were full of big, high-level scalps of people that, you know, have been wrestling and doing this for so long. She would be so much further along in her development. So it's important. I know we want to make Trick look strong, but we can't feed him too many jabronis of people learning.
Right.
Like, he has to beat these top level talents as well, so that he's actually learning within the process.
For sure. Keeping things with NXT, but on a I guess a sadder note. We've seen the releases happening in WWE over the last couple of weeks, and the most recent ones were that of Scripps, formerly Reggie, the Sommelier, and of course Gable Steveson. Let's talk about Scripps first of all. With Scripps, he wasn't released. He's still under contract until the end of this month, end of May. But it's been reported that the WWE have decided not to renew his contract, which he himself has made publicly clear that he'll be free and available from the start of June. When you first heard the news of Scripps leaving, what were your, have they missed out on something that could have been much better?
I'll say that I'll be lying if I said that I cared, if I'm being honest. Like, I guess it's his choice. It seems like it's his choice more so than a release, which I guess is good that he kind of can control that destiny. Maybe he wants more for himself, which then in that aspect, good on him. Maybe what he's currently getting isn't enough to kind of feed his ambition, which is absolutely fine. To be honest, my issue with all of this more so is that we again have kind of found out, and it's possibly ruined an opportunity to do something really good here. I think we could have had a scenario where Jada Parker overthrows him as like leader of the group, and they use OTM to throw him out, literally get rid of him, throw him out of NXT or something like that, put some heat on the group as well. Like, knowing all of this kind of stuff that happens in the back, I know within this content creation journalist space that we live, that's what this is the chaos we operate in. But sometimes I think it does ruin opportunity. Like, I'm trying to think back to, you know, when D'Angelo got rid of the other guy because Cole,
who's now Cole Carter.
Cole Carter. They threw him, they threw him over the bridge. Again, I think maybe
we didn't
because
know
NXT
that,
was taped before, though. I think it was funny. But you can do good things to get rid of people and to prop up those that will remain in the situation. And I just feel like this is probably a missed opportunity. They could still do something, but we all now know like why they're going to do it, if you see what I mean.
I was going to say that the thing that I wonder about is we all found out from Scripps himself.
Right.
So this is an interesting scenario where it wasn't the dirt sheets who broke the news or anything like that. It was Scripps himself, which makes me wonder, you know, why he chose to do that 30 days from his contract actually being expired. Quite frankly, he didn't have to say anything. His contract could have been up, and then, you know, we could have found out that way. So it does make me wonder why he went about telling us that way. Was it because they said we have nothing else for you? Was this his own decision? Like, I don't know. You know, that'll be a great question. I'd love to get an answer to at some point.
I believe, knowing of or reading of some of the other reports in terms of some of the other contracts and stuff like that, there were a couple where it was WWE not necessarily cutting the contract, but decided not to renew. I believe Drew Gulak was a similar thing as well. Obviously, with the controversies surrounding him over the last few weeks or whatever else, they decided not to renew his contract. They didn't cut it. So I think it's probably, that more so than him asking to be released or anything like that. But at the same time, you know, he's taking it on the chin and he's like, okay, well, if this is what it's gonna be, let me create my opportunities for myself, and make sure I'm not out of pocket, out of a job the second this contract ends. Because with his abilities, there are so many possibilities, whether that be on the indies, so many people saying he should go to TNA, you know, the whole X Division thing and all the rest of it. he's got spaces he can definitely find himself in. You know, he's also a stuntman. He's done Cirque du Soleil, he's done acting. There's so many other opportunities that he can jump on as well. So I'm guessing he's just making sure he can maximize that as soon as possible. But it's sad to see him go. I think there was so much potential in what he could have achieved, but at the same time, with the length of time that he was there and what he did do and the amount of reinventions that kind of for me didn't necessarily work, I'm not overly surprised he's at where he's at, and I do actually feel as though he'll be better off somewhere else, and especially with him now kind of having a little bit more control of what he does and how he's presented and stuff as well. So that should be interesting. The other bigger one, of course, is the release of Gable Steveson, the Olympic gold medalist, who was famously drafted to Raw just months after him being signed. Never stepped foot in a pro wrestling ring, but of course is one of the most dominant freestyle wrestlers and amateur wrestlers we have seen in recent times. He was the first signing of this NEO program that we're now very much used to WWE signing, you know, young stars of college sports in terms of, you know, whether that be track and field or athletics, as we call it in the UK, football or American football, as we call it in the UK. Why do we call everything different? Soccer or football, as we call it in the UK. All these different places that these people, the only one that we call the same is basketball. But all these different places that these young talents have come from, kind of no experience in the wrestling game, bringing them in. But with Steveson, of course, it was a little bit different. You know, he decided to still carry on with his freestyle wrestling. They built a ring at the University of Ohio, I think it is that he was from.
Minnesota, wasn't it?
Minnesota, that's the one. Minnesota, the same place as Brock Lesnar, of course. And Shelton Benjamin. But things just never quite worked out the way that the WWE really wanted when it came to Steveson, and of course they've decided to cut his contract. Boys, are we surprised? I know the answer to this question. Are we surprised that this has happened? I guess the other question is, are we surprised it's taken this long?
From my point of view, he's probably he's a victim to maybe a lack of planning. He was signed up, joined WWE, all of this kind of stuff, when obviously things were not how they are now. The regime was different and all that kind of stuff. NXT was in a kind of different place. The NEO program, like you said, didn't exist. He was the guinea pig of the NEO program. And he was, in essence, in some way, shape or form, a superstar. You know, he was not coming in just from like a college level or something like that. This guy he performed for his country, got a gold medal for his country. So his circumstances were very, very different. And I think that's as much leeway as I'm going to allow him, because from there, you know, they gave you all the tools, it seems. A ring in your university is absolute madness. Like, they've given you the opportunities. They've paired you with the best. You're affiliated with Paul Heyman. You've got the affiliation and support of Brock Lesnar. You know, probably Shelton Benjamin through that same, you know, university. Like, they've given you a lot, and you haven't made this happen. His brother, who we spoke about before the show started, on the other hand, has obviously taken whatever opportunity he's went the long way, you know, to where he is today, the route, which I guess has now been made, which we are speaking of, and, you know, he's got himself a regular place on TV doing well. So I think maybe Gable didn't quite apply himself. I even read something saying that had WWE have done this earlier, like maybe even a week earlier, he could have put his name in the pool for, I think, the upcoming trials or something like that. Now he's going to miss
the Paris Olympics. Yep.
Yes. Right. So you can see his focus isn't really here. Like, he probably just saw, like, when my wrestling career is all said and done, I can come and do this, you know, TV wrestling stuff. But let me get in the door with them now, sort of thing. Yeah, and it hasn't worked out for him. And obviously, there's been other factors. There's been some stuff around his name about whatever happened for him in his university. Yeah, he's been a victim of the circumstance, but I think as well he hasn't applied himself to improve within this domain.
Max, you mentioned his brother, of course, who has kind of gone through a similar thing in terms of the NIL program. And we've seen others who have gone through the system, and we've seen them emerging in NXT. A couple of them on the main roster, the Creed brothers, for example, very similar backgrounds as well in the amateur wrestling space, now doing their thing, come through NXT, been successful, now on the main roster. Gerard, what do you feel is the difference here? Why is it, or how is it that we've seen success with these other guys, but yet the guy who everyone expected to be the big star, be almost like the new Kurt Angle or the next Chad Gable or whatever else? What's the real difference here between Gable Steveson and the others?
Well, I think the difference is impartially what you said. You know, the expectation wasn't just for him to be a wrestler. It was for him to be the next Kurt Angle. It was for him to be the next Brock Lesnar. And having had the pedigree of a Brock Lesnar, of a Shelton Benjamin in terms of the University of Minnesota, of a Kurt Angle in terms of being an Olympic gold medalist, it was those kinds of pressures. And I think what people don't understand is there are many athletes who attempt to come to WWE and figure that their athleticism alone will transfer over, and it does not. And so I think this is one of those cases where he was a great amateur wrestler. Yes, he, did all that he did in the Olympics, but that didn't translate into pro wrestling. And here's what's interesting to me. People talk about whatever the allegations were, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all have one match to go off of. That dreaded match at the Great American Bash between him and Baron Corbin. They trusted Baron Corbin in NXT for quite some time. And to pair him with Baron Corbin says, okay, we've got you in there with somebody who's going to take care of you. And if Baron Corbin couldn't make him look good, they clearly knew what they were dealing with. So, I think this is just one of those cases. And I liken it to this, if I choose, I'd like to think I'm pretty smart. I like to think I have a pretty decent brain. I like to think I'm pretty creative, so if someone offers me a position to be a painter, and I give my all to it, here's what I know coming into the gate. I have a great mind. I'm pretty innovative. I'm pretty creative. I can solve problems. But you know what I can't do? I can't paint. And so I don't care how you set me up. You bring me, the greatest painter in the world, and you lock him here in my house, and you let us, paint together for 18 hours a day. I am not a painter. So after all the things you give me, it's not my skill set. I can try, ask me to be a mechanic. I can't do it. I just can't. And so I think this is a case where, and I say this very, very carefully, on paper, it looked like Gable Steveson could have done it. Much like when you apply for that job and you make your resume look like you can do it, but deep down inside, I need this job, but I'm going to fake it till I make it. And the problem is he couldn't do it. And so it's not the other thing, much like what you said, Mex, is his devotion was divided. Right? Like he secretly still wanted to go after the Olympics. And there was a lot. And that was part of the reason he didn't really fully go after this before, because it was like, well, can I qualify for the Olympics? Can I not? You cannot have your foot in both pools. You got to commit to one. And I don't think he was willing to commit to the WWE pool. I don't think he was as skilled in this genre as he was in the amateur space. And I think at the end of the day, WWE had to say, we know what we thought you could be. Here's where you are. We got to let it go.
When I look back at all the different, aspects of this whole story and everything that's happened and whatnot, I feel as though it's gone down like this. Gable Steveson, as we know, was also a fan of wrestling growing up and all that kind of stuff, and he's done his thing in the amateur and collegiate space. Done great things, absolutely amazing, and probably thought the next move, I'm going to go to WWE, and he probably really did. signed almost straight, literally weeks after winning a gold medal, was paraded at WrestleMania, paraded at SummerSlam, all the rest of it. And then I'm not going to rush into this thing. Let me take my time. Let me stay in my safe space of the collegiate wrestling. Let me say my safe space. And I think as he continued to do it, he realized, I don't think I actually can.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the pressures, the expectancies, the big contract, the backing of a Brock Lesnar and whoever else and all the rest of it, is like, I still need to kind of stay in this space, but I still need my safe space of collegiate wrestling as well. Did all of that, won 2 more championships, national championship, the US trials, whatever it was, and said, I can't do this. Then the NXT thing happened, and he was like, I'm definitely not doing this.
Right.
I'm definitely not,
because he wasn't originally supposed to go to NXT in the first place.
Nope. I'm definitely not doing this. The reaction that he got must have messed with his head as well. They even took him off the NXT roster as well. It's only at the start of this year that he was started to do some live events, NXT live events. I think he had 1 or 2 dark matches, SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, I think it was very, very clear at a point. I was going to say very early on, but I'm not too sure. But it was very clear at a point that his dedication just was not there. Mm-hmm. And I think with everything else to think about, that's the main part of it that didn't work for him. That's why we see the likes of the Creed brothers where they are, his brother where he is, others that are in the Neil program who have made a bit of success. So we're starting to see that their success coming through, is that their dedication is very different. Gable Stevenson's just wasn't there. And whether that's his fault, whether that's outside aspects, whatever it is, but it just wasn't there for him to carry on. And unfortunately, it was a big contract. WWE are not going to hold on to someone who they feel isn't quite progressing as they want them to, while they're spending money waiting for him to progress. It's just not going to happen. And in all of that said as well, he's no different to a lot of people who have come through on the Neil program, because we found out as well that I think there's like a 6-month period where they assess them, and if they don't feel they're doing well, boom, they're gone. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. Obviously, he had way more than 6 months, but we are where we are, and unfortunately for him. But again, just as someone like Scripps, as much as it didn't work out for them in WWE, they have more than enough talent to do other things in other places. He can still, he shared his whole love for MMA, and that was an option before he signed with WWE. That's still an option for him as well. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the Paris Olympics is not an option for him anymore, unfortunately. But there are still ways and things he can do. But
if he comes round, if he matures, comes round, gets devoted to it, maybe there is another kind of young up and coming Gable Steveson that takes his kind of position in the US wrestling team. He might one day still, he's still very young. There's time for him to kind of, say, okay, let me have another crack at this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. May not be via WWE. He might go through TNA or something like that. I'm sure they obviously have enough money. AEW could pick him up tomorrow and be like, we have the Olympic gold medalist here, and do all of that kind of stuff and try and especially let's do what WWE couldn't and turn him into a star, whatever the case is. There is still loads of opportunity if he is dedicated to doing this. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we just have to see if he's gonna turn around and do it. But for me, if I ever hear anyone blaming WWE NXT for this, I personally won't buy it. I personally think NXT is the greatest academy for these women and men to learn where to wrestle and get onto TV and become TV ready that I've seen in a very, very long time. So, and there's too many success stories right now to ever say this place is the problem. He doesn't have to look much further. He can sit at a Thanksgiving table and look at his brother, as to see, success. So, yeah,
that's the turkey.
Yeah, like let's call a spade a spade. You know,
Yeah.
when he's focused,
Very
come
true.
back round to it if that's what you want to do. But I don't think it's your employers that are really to blame on this one.
Not at all. And you know what? And it sometimes it makes me wonder, based on the timing as well. We've seen Ronda Rousey, you know, talking quite a lot over the last month or so and whatnot, talking about the problems with WWE and this, and that. And I feel almost as though WWE don't want that type of situation again, where they kind of thrust someone right in the forefront, let them do what they're doing, but we all know that Ronda Rousey's dedication was not what it should and needed to be in order for her to be a real success. We can talk about success in terms of, she's won championships and we can put so and so on her name and whatnot. But it was very clear from day one, it just wasn't for her. And I feel as though that's been a major learning curve for them as well, in terms of forcing, you know, the next big star and then getting this kind of, you know, backlash, I guess, as we're getting with as Ronda Rousey has been over the last few weeks. But yeah,
I think this is where you can see as well, they're not pressed by these big name free agents as well.
No.
Like, we can lose these guys. Okay, you know, some of them we might want, but even if we want them, this is what we're offering them. Like, we're not going to feel like bullied into offering them more. Like, because we have a whole factory called NXT where we are making tomorrow's stars. Okay, we don't have, you know, a Will Ospreay right now, but you know what? In 3 years' time, 4 years' time, we've got someone that is going to be on that trajectory. So, you know, it's like investing in the long term sort of thing. You don't have to feel bullied. Rightly, they're learning from these errors in signings, and I think that's the most important thing. You know, you got to make sure that this person actually wants it and that we can provide a platform for these people rather than just signing names and putting them on TV and hoping for the best. And then in a year's time, they're going to be doing shoot interviews on you and your company. So, yeah, let's get it right from the jump, really.
Yeah, you know what this also reminds me of? It reminds me of the fact that they don't have to look far to find the people who are actually dedicated to this business, who are brand new to this whole thing, right? So cue your US champion Logan Paul, okay? Who is an amazing example of somebody who is not an Olympian. He was not a trained athlete and has come in and is able to compete against the Roman Reigns, right? You look at a Bad Bunny, you know, who took this thing so seriously that he was willing to train for WrestleMania and train for Backlash. Like, you have enough people that are right at arm's length. You know, a Bianca Belair who became one of the biggest stars who did not have any wrestling background. There are tons of people in WWE that they go, when we get our hands on you and you're determined and you have desire, you can become something. So they're not pressured to go, oh, what will we do without a Gable Steveson? Because they can create 10 more like him. You know, that's just the way that it is. And so, you know, with that understanding, it's okay if we lose you. It's okay if we don't sign the latest free agent. It's okay and WWE has historically done well at taking people who nobody knew and building their own stars and making them household names. So they don't have to worry about, you know, the loss of a Gable Steveson.
The list is endless in terms of these people who don't have wrestling experience and come from other places and whatnot. You know, Bianca Belair, as you mentioned, Jade Cargill is another one. You know, someone commented when I posted about this news about Gable Steveson being released. You know, they said, why do we need a Gable Steveson when we've got Chad Gable and the Creed brothers? Like, then
there's that. Julius
Creed hasn't even touched the level of potential that man has. It is wow. And even you can even go back in history, not so far back, with Mark Henry.
Yeah,
another one. You know what I mean? So there are so many, and as we've already mentioned, you know, we've seen the likes of a Kalani Jordan, Jada Parker, so many others that are coming through NXT at the moment, and who are, you know, some who are on the main roster now. So losing Gable Steveson, it's not an issue. It's not an issue. It was, I think it was an easy decision. If I'm completely honest, I think it was a very easy decision. Had to be done, and we are where we are, and that's it.
Agreed.
That is it. Also, that is it for our show.
That is it.
We've come to the end of our show. You have been watching. Oh gosh, you have been watching WrstlXtra on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. Shout out Ches Nasty as well. Always a good friend. Always joining us as well every week. Shout out to you. You can watch us every single week on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and also see when this guy Mex puts out all of his reactions to WWE, AEW, everything else in between. You can also find Mex on the Resting's channel, all their weekly content from the man them. You can find Mex on all socials, WrestleManiac.uk on Instagram, at WrestleManiac UK on X. You can find this guy, Gerard Bonner, on all things Bonafide. You can find the omnipresent man everywhere on the planet, as well as Southern Honor Wrestling, the Nightmare Factory, Arshare Wrestling, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, IWE. The list goes on. His own show, the Faction Show, and as well as WWT Live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, who are celebrating 300 episodes this week.
This Friday.
This Friday, I will try my best to try and be there. But
Yes.
we'll see what happens as well. You can find me, A Dazzle, on Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram, BWA Dazzle on X. Guys, this has been a jam-packed show. And how we managed to fit it into 1 hour and 15 minutes is beyond me, but we have. We will see you again next week.
See you later, guys.